हर्षल जैन एंड आई एम अ मेंटोर एट Geeks for Geeks. So first of all, वीडियो काफ़ी अच्छा था यार. Like I pretty much enjoyed it and काफ़ी कुछ इंस्पायरिंग होता रहता है आपके कॉलेजेस में. So मुझे इतनी
Thank
सब
you, sir.
चीज़ों
Thank you.
का मुझे इन सब चीज़ों का इतना नॉलेज नहीं है. बट आई एम अ वेब डेवलपर, आई एम अ वन स्टैक डेवलपर. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई वुड लाइक टू नो दैट लाइक सब आईआईटी के हैं या फिर कोई दूसरे कॉलेजेस का भी है.
सर बहुत लाइक आईआईटी से भी हैं और बाहर के कॉलेजेस के भी हैं काफी बच्चे.
ओके सो लेट मी टेल यू वन थिंग. आई एम नॉट फ्रॉम एन आईआईटी एंड मैं बहुत अच्छे से कॉलेज से भी नहीं हूँ. सो इट्स एन ऑनर फॉर मी टू टेक अ सेशन विथ यू गाइस. सो आपसे भी काफ़ी कुछ सीखने को मिलेगा. एंड कमेंट सेक्शन में भी मैं देख रहा हूँ काफ़ी सही सही लोग हैं. ओके, वीआईटी से भी हैं, बिट से भी हैं, शारदा से भी है. नाइस यार, नाइस. सो बहुत अच्छा है. सो हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू आर एक्चुअली फेमिलियर विद वेब डेवलपमेंट? लाइक कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स आप बना चुके हो एंड लाइक इन विच स्टैक आर यू करेंटली वर्किंग ऑन? दैट इज फॉर एग्जांपल राइट नाउ आई करेंटली वर्क ऑन मर्न स्टैक. सो आप किस स्टैक में काम करते हो? गाइस गाइस कमेंट में जल्दी बताओ. ओके, मर्न स्टैक, एच टी एम एल सी एस एस. एंड अभी मोस्टली बच्चे लाइक कौन से ईयर में होंगे? फर्स्ट ईयर, सेकेंड ईयर? ऑलराइट, सो आई थिंक सब बिगनर ही है एंड मैं अज्यूम करूंगा कि अभी सब बिगनर है वेब डेवलपमेंट के फील्ड में. ओके ओके ओके, बाप रे, इतने सारे कमेंट्स. हाउ मेनी पीपल आर देयर एग्जैक्टली? 352. ओके, दैट्स ग्रेट. ऑलराइट. सो हम स्टार्ट करते हैं बिल्कुल बेसिक से, ठीक है? मैं अपनी जर्नी भी थोड़ी सी बताते जाऊंगा. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल जब मैं कॉलेज में था फर्स्ट ईयर में, सो मैं थोड़ा इंग्लिश में ही बात करता हूँ अब, ठीक है? सो व्हेन आई वाज इन फर्स्ट ईयर ऑफ माय कॉलेज एंड आई डेंट न्यू व्हाट एग्जैक्टली टू डू, है ना? और मेरा जेई वगैरह भी नहीं निकला था, तो ऑब्वियसली बात है थोड़ा सा एक होता है, डिमोटिवेशन होता है ऑनेस्टली. सो आई डेंट नो व्हाट टू डू. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आई जस्ट एक्सप्लोर्ड अ लॉट, ठीक है? And in college, first of all, teachers and our education system is like, yeah, they would be teaching you mostly programming, not that much of web development. So that's also fine, because if I talk about companies, yeah, they usually ask programming stuff and DSA and all. But I was that guy who always wanted to do something different, so I managed programming along with web development. So let's begin with the web development journey. And मैं पहले आपको अपनी स्क्रीन भी शेयर करता हूँ, फिर हम आगे डिस्कस करते हैं. जस्ट गिव मी अ मिनट. जस्ट ओके, नाउ आई थिंक एवरीथिंग इज फाइन. एक्चुअली वेबएक्स लैग कर रहा है क्या? आई थिंक वेबएक्स इज लैगिंग अ बिट बिकॉज एवरीथिंग इज वर्किंग फाइन. Okay, now I think everything is fine. So guys, I'm sharing my screen and please tell me, is my screen visible or not? Yes, everything is fine. Yes. Okay. आई थिंक बहुत ज़्यादा लोग ज्वाइन हो चुके हैं इसलिए हो रहा है थोड़ा सा, बट अभी सही है, ठीक है? ओके, सो लेट्स बिगिन विद द रोड मैप टू वेब डेवलपमेंट. सो कैन एनीवन टेल मी हु इज़ अ वेब डेवलपर? एग्जैक्टली वेब डेवलपर का काम क्या होता है? ओके, मैं बताता हूँ. सो हु इज़ अ वेब डेवलपर? सो वेब डेवलपर इज समवन हु एक्चुअली बिल्ड्स वेबसाइट. ये बेसिक सी डेफिनेशन थी जो मुझे पता थी. एंड एक चीज़ मुझे और पता था कि हाँ भाई, इससे पैसे कमाते हैं. लाइक व्हेन आई वाज इन फर्स्ट ईयर, देयर इज नो वे someone can actually give you a job or an internship so easily. and that too if you are not from a very great place and you don't have that much skills. So first thing which I thought was, let's become a web developer. So in web development you have very vast technologies, very diverse, very much diversification in web development. So yes, a web developer is a professional who specializes in the design, development and maintenance of websites and web application. That's right. So वेब डेवलपमेंट में सीधे से बताता हूँ आपको. हम एक बेसिक सा चार्ट समझेंगे ट्री स्ट्रक्चर में कि आपको पहले शुरू कहाँ से करना चाहिए. ठीक है. So mostly what you will see is, if you are considering yourself a web developer as a beginner, you will hear the terms like I'm a front end developer or I'm a back end developer. And if I talk about myself, I'm a full stack developer. So in web development, we actually have full stack development. I hope my screen is visible. So yes, full stack. So now, who is a full stack developer? So there are many definitions, and one definition is, a full stack developer is that developer who actually manages both front end as well as the back end of the website. Now, what is the front end and what is the back end? So front end is something which you see in your browsers, in your mobile browsers, in your desktop browsers or laptop browsers. Okay, so for example, you visit a website like youtube.com, or you visit a website like amazon.com, and let's take you to a website, geeks for geeks. Okay, चलो थोड़ा सा अपना भी प्रमोशन. Okay, so this is a website, right? This is a very great website, geeks for geeks, and you can check out this. So here you can see that we have a lot of elements here. You can see we have a navigation bar at the top, and then we have a search bar at here, and then we have some text, then we have some similar looking cards, and then at the bottom you can see we have a slider also. Okay, so this is known as slider. Some people call it carousel or whatever you name it. So yeah, I call it a slider. So you have a slider also, then you have different buttons also. If you click this button, you'll be landed to some other page, right? And similar to this, if I come down, and here you can see we have courses also. So again, similar kind of card, similar kind of UI. And at the bottom you would see that some other kind of design is here. At the bottom you would go here and you would see a footer. So what is this? This is actually the front end of your website. Okay, front end of your website. So what's the role of backend? For example, if I just code the front end and only six elements are here, if I only talk about the front end and I want these elements to be updated in future, so will I be coding the front end again and again? No, obviously I'll be having a backend, I'll be having a database which manages things for me. Okay, so in those cases you'd be having a backend to give you different data. Okay, you won't be having a static data. Those days are gone when you have just a static website. If you are talking about websites like Geeks for Geeks or Amazon or YouTube, you know that data actually refreshes every time. So for that refreshment, for getting data again and again, we actually use a backend. So let's start with the front end part first. Let me explain what is exactly the front end. And again, my handwriting is not that good, so sorry for that. Okay, so yes, let's talk about the front end part. So actually, the full stack is often divided into two fields, that is front end. Okay, front end. So if I write front end, then we have the back end. सर्टिफिकेट चाहिए, आ जाओ दिला दूंगा. Certificate, I think certificates are great, but unless you become great at that skill, like मैं अगर HTML भी सीख रहा हूँ, so I must be the best person. जिसे आप HTML का कोड लिखवा लो कि मुझसे कुछ भी बन जाएगा. ठीक है. So certificates are also great, but if you have the skill, then we have other doors also. Like personally, I do freelance work also. I build website and application, mobile applications for different clients. So it's like I don't have that much certificates. Yeah, I just have some full stack certificates, and then after that some programming based certificates. But personally, certificates don't help me that much. If I just talk about general stuff, yeah, if you are visiting a company, if you are giving an interview, then you would be needing a certificate definitely. But yeah, if you are just learning some skill and you are great at that, then definitely काम तो मिल ही जाना है. Okay, so freelance work तो मिल ही जाता है easily, right? I want to be the best person. Yes, you'll be the best person, definitely. Okay. So yes, then the next thing is back end. So back end. सो इन दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या था? फ्रंट एंड एक्चुअली इज द UI which you see. Okay, so let me just design the UI, and this is somewhat a page where you can just assume that you use Instagram, right? So for example, this is the Instagram profile picture, this is the profile picture, then there would be some name, then there would be some email, then there would be some about, and then your photos, right? Instagram profile picture and profile page actually looks like this, right? Similarly, how you get this data? How you get this data? You actually get this data by connecting with the backend. So backend is running somewhere. For example, you would be hosting your backend on AWS, Amazon Web Services. Those of you who know, that's fine. But those of you don't know, that's totally fine, because in future you'll be learning AWS and you would know that AWS has different purposes. One purpose is you store your backend inside AWS. Okay, so your backend would be somewhere, and I am assuming your backend is hosted on AWS. Now, what's the language of backend? We'll discuss that. Okay, there are different languages like Node.js, PHP, Django, and Spring Boot. There are different languages. We'll talk about those. And mostly, I'm a merge stack developer, so I'll be focusing on Node.js only. So yeah, this is your server. Here, your backend is stored. Now, let me clear you one thing. Backend helps the frontend to get the data. Backend does not store the data. Who stores the data? So your database would be storing the data, right? So it would be again bringing data from database. Okay, so your database again would be somewhere like I use MongoDB, some people use MySQL and different tools. Okay, so from the database, data would be taken and then sent back to the backend, and then the user who's trying to get the data would be verified and then sent back again. So that's how you actually send or receive data from front end to back end, then back end to database, then database to back end, and then to front end. That's how actually things work between front end, back end, and database. So if you are a full stack developer, then you must know all these three things. Okay, front end, back end, and database. If you are a full stack developer. Now let's only talk about front end development. Okay, only front end development. What is it exactly? So now I'm going to talk about front end. So front end, again, a very basic definition. You build your UI using front end. So what languages are actually inside front end? If you are just a beginner, so in those terms, I'm gonna talk about as a beginner. So front end. What do you have in front end? So in front end, if you are a beginner, for beginners, I'm just saying, for beginners, when you are starting with the front end, you must know HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript. These three skills are mandatory if you want to become at least a front-end developer. So there are different openings in different companies. Like if I give you a very basic example, a few days ago, I actually took an interview with a guy who was a front-end engineer at Amazon. Okay, so he was great at DSA, but also he knew front-end very properly. Like he knew HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's what is required for becoming a front-end developer. And some front-end extra technologies are also required. For example, React.js or Next.js. We'll be discussing that. But at least you must be learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, is this session on the web dev using Python? No, no, no. It's session for general web development, and I'll be focusing it towards the MERN stack development. Okay, towards the MERN stack development. Why? Because personally, I'm a MERN stack developer and I can teach that well very properly. But yeah, you can assume the same for the other languages also. Like for example, for the backend in MERN stack, we use Node.js, right? Instead of this, you can actually use Django, that is for Python, right? So in different cases, you can change your scale also, but the logic is exactly same. The purpose of backend is one, and the purpose of backend is something else. Okay, the logic is exactly same. Okay, skills might change, the languages might change. So first of all, let's talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript. What is HTML? So HTML stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay, so actually it's HTTP. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Okay, so HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. What is this? So whatever text you write, for example, if I give you an example of Geeks for Geeks. So again, if I visit Geeks for Geeks, you can see that we have a lot text here. Okay, we have a lot of text here. So if I just right click here and I'll just do some experiment. Okay, so I'll just show you my GitHub profile. So this is my GitHub profile. Okay, so let's refresh first of all. So you can see this is my GitHub profile. All of you must have a GitHub account, and here you can see that we have some text, right? This is my name, this is my ID, and different my accounts, social accounts also. So if I want to just talk about HTML, let me just right click here and inspect, and here you see the HTML code of this page. Okay, so this code actually is like all of your elements. For example, I have an image here, so for that we use img tag, image element. Then we have my name, Harshal Jain, in bold, so this is a h1 tag in HTML. Then we have a small text, Viraj J014, this is a small text. And then after that we have smaller links also, for that we use a tag in HTML. So just for all the elements, you can see we have different kind of elements. For showing all the elements we use HTML. Okay, first of all, for showing all the elements like image, text, search bar, smaller text or links, different kind of things are used using HTML. Okay, so now let's talk about Asus ROG. I personally use Asus Tough Series laptop, and I've been using it from past 2 years. And खुद की income से खरीदा था. Okay, so like it's a very great laptop. So now let's come back to the topic. So now suppose I want to change something. For example, I would increase my followers. So I'll just right click and inspect here. So you can see that I inspected here. Now you can see we have a span tag here. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just make it, suppose, this much. Okay, so now if I hit enter, you can see that my followers actually increased. My followers actually increase. So that's how some people actually fool you with their followers, and you can play around with your friends also. So you can see I just increased my followers temporary. Okay, for temporary purpose, you can't actually do this permanently, but yeah. So you can see that that's how you can actually manipulate HTML. This is the HTML code, where you have different links, different text, different icons. You can see we have icons also, small icons. Then we have an image also, and for different pages you create a basic structure of your page, that is HTML. In other words, HTML is the skeleton of your website. Okay, every human has a skeleton, has a skull, has a like different parts. Okay, so it's the skeleton of your website. Now let's talk about CSS. Okay, so let me just draw a good skeleton here. I'll just create a good skeleton here. I'll just say that this is a skull. Okay, this is the skeleton. Okay, fine. Now let's talk about the CSS. So CSS is actually the beauty. It's like, भाई वो कितनी अच्छी लड़की है या वो कितना अच्छा लड़का दिख रहा है, like it's the beauty, right? It's the like you would say decoration of your website. With just the elements, you can't just actually make a website beautiful. You actually use CSS for that. Okay, for example, if I just show you Geeks for Geeks. Okay, if I just show you Geeks for Geeks, here you'll come, and here you'll see that it looks cool. Okay, it looks great. But this is a color, right? This is again a color. We have different colors for different section. Now assume, what would it have been for Geeks or for any other giant or any other company, if it wasn't any color, like it didn't had any decoration for this specific website? Would you be interested in just clicking on anything? No, obviously. So CSS plays a very major role in decoration, and as a beginner you must master your CSS. Okay, and I think we have some extensions also. Let me just talk about one extension, and I would just search for CSS remover. Hopefully it would work, I'm not sure. So CSS remover. Okay, let me just search extension. Okay, so you can install this on any browser, but I think it would allow me to block the CSS. Okay, so let's try to remove this. Okay, and I'm just doing it on my own browser, but it's not recommended to anyone else. Okay, so now if I just refresh any website, so you can see this is Geeks for Geeks without CSS. So are you interested now in this website? Obviously not. So that's why CSS is required. Okay, and if I just show you GitHub, you can see that GitHub is like this without CSS. Very boring, right? So that's the purpose of CSS, to actually align the elements into their different locations and make some beauty, bring them some beauty, right? So this is the purpose of CSS. Okay, so CSS actually handles your different styles, colors, decoration of your website. Now you got the idea. Okay, so now I'll come back here, and I would just say, yeah, this is the beauty. Okay, so I can't just draw a beautiful human, so I'll just write beauty. Okay, so beauty. Okay, fine. So now let's talk about JavaScript. Very complicated thing, and a lot of people actually are confused कि चलो ठीक है, HTML हो गया, CSS हो गया, समझ में आ गया कि हाँ बन तो गई वेबसाइट. Why do we need JavaScript? So the main logic of JavaScript is to interact with the backend. Now you might be questioning how. So let me just give you another example with the same website. So first of all, guys, I would do one thing. I'm gonna remove the extension which I have here. Okay, so I think just a minute. Okay, I'll just remove the extension now because I think okay. Now I'll come back to this website so you can see that now it's full, fine. So you can see that at the very first part, you can see we have a search bar and then we have a search button. What does it do? It would simply whatever you write here. For example, if I write DSA here, so it would be bringing me data for DSA. How did it happen? So it happened because of JavaScript. That means JavaScript would allow you to modify data, manipulate data of your website. For example, you can see this is a page, right? You can see that it's continuously changing in some interval, 1 or 2 seconds, right? How is this happening? This is happening because of JavaScript. That means the purpose of JavaScript is CSS is so beautiful, so elegant, just looking like wow, yes, a very trending meme. Okay, so yeah, JavaScript actually acts as a brain of your website. Okay, so this is the brain, right? एक सेकंड में मुझे कुछ ना कुछ करना है, ठीक है? हर एक सेकंड में मुझे कुछ करना है, हर एक दिन में मुझे कुछ करना है. That's what JavaScript does. Okay, so it's just changing content every time. That's the purpose of our JavaScript, right? So now similarly, you can just see when once I click this button, you can see that the content has changed. Once I click this again, content has changed. If I click on view all, it would take me to some page. How is this happening? This is actually happening. You got this data all because of JavaScript. That means JavaScript, first of all, acts as a brain. That means if you want to perform a task again and again in 1 second, 2 second, or you want to change the data, in some cases, you would be using JavaScript. Second thing is JavaScript would act as a mediator when you want to bring some data from backend. Okay, when you are talking about backend, then for example, if you have a website, not a static website, a very much interactive website, so you have a user profile, right? So from where you think your data is coming, first of all, you have a HTML CSS page, which is your UI. Then how does the data come here? So HTML CSS is connected with JavaScript. Okay, so later on you'll be learning about stuff named as DOM. Okay, this is a topic named as DOM. So DOM is actually, you can say HTML and CSS are actually inside JavaScript. You'll learn about this. So what it does is JavaScript connects with the backend and connects with the HTML CSS code and would allow us to transfer data in between. Okay, so now I hope you understood what is JavaScript. Now let's continue. Now, how many of you are actually familiar with JavaScript, have actually worked on these three: HTML, CSS, JavaScript? JavaScript is used for transition mostly. Yes, it's used for transition, but also interacting with the backend. Okay, someone is familiar with HTML document object model. Yes, yes. Okay. So, like JavaScript एक बहुत complicated language है. Okay, personally, when I started learning JavaScript, I was like, वेब डेवलपमेंट चालू करते हैं, ठीक है? आई स्टार्टेड लर्निंग विद HTML, देन CSS भी हो गई, देन आई स्विच टू जावास्क्रिप्ट. दैट मीन्स द थर्ड स्किल विच यू मस्ट नीड. Now, JavaScript is a bit complicated for beginners, but as you learn more about this, you will feel कि without this, today's websites or mobile applications also won't be anything, because you use JavaScript in mobile apps also. For example, we have React Native, which actually uses JavaScript inside itself. Okay, so yeah, without JavaScript, nothing is possible. So first of all, you'll be mastering all these three. Now let's continue with the latest trend in web development. This is outdated. Okay, HTML, CSS, JavaScript is outdated, but this is important. Okay, this is important. So for beginners, if you are a beginner, first you master. Okay, so I'll just write one here. Okay, so number one is you learning HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Now once you master these, you need to learn a combination of these three. What is the combination of these three? Can anyone tell me? What is the combination of these three which we use in the current industry? So the combination of all these three is actually React.js. That's it. Not a very big task. If you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you can easily learn React.js. I think in a week you can easily learn this. So if you talk about HTML, CSS, JavaScript, at least give 2 3 months for HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Once you master HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you create some projects. Like I would say, create an e-commerce platform, or you can create clone of a website like Netflix or Amazon, or you can create a clone of Geeks for Geeks also. So yeah, you must create a clone to master any skill. If you are talking about web development, so you can just copy any website's code, like not exact code, you must copy the website's design. That means you must create the design exact replica. That's what we call as a clone. So just create projects. First of all, you master these, then you would be creating some projects. Then after that, you must switch to React.js, because currently React.js is in Dragon, Kotlin, React.js website. Yes, actually, React.js is the combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So once you start learning React.js, what is it? What's React.js exactly? So React.js is nothing but just a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, these three actually are all together used in React.js. So in short, I would say React.js is the modern skill which is used in web development, front end development, and it has a lot benefits above normal HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like in HTML, if I give you a very basic example, like if I go to any website, like if I take you to Amazon, okay, or Amazon or any other website. So like if I just talk about normal this Geeks for Geeks websites, or in YouTube, if I just go to any other page, you can see that it's loading. It's loading. If I go to any other page, you can see it's just loading. Okay. And if I show you YouTube or any other like page, so let me just open YouTube in some browser. YouTube पे यार बाकी बहुत कुछ रहता है, इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा हाइड कर रहा हूँ, जस्ट अ मिनट. ओके. Right. So you can see that this is YouTube, right? So you can see if I visit this, you can see that the whole page didn't load. It just loaded the new data. You can see if I just show you the short section or the live section, you can see that the whole page didn't load. You didn't see the loading circle. That means it just loads the data. How it's happening? It didn't refresh the complete page. It just loads the required amount of data. It happens because of React.js. So the benefit of React.js over HTML, CSS, JavaScript is, if you are talking about the whole page and only some part needs to be updated, in that case, HTML, CSS, JavaScript would load the whole page, but React.js would only load that specific part which needs to be updated. Okay, so it saves a lot of network traffic. It helps us to get a better user experience, and obviously would generate a lot of revenue for your company. Okay, that's why people use this. All right, so this is React.js, and it would definitely take 1 or 2 weeks to learn React.js, and then you can build some projects using React.js. Okay, हर्षल भाई के आगे कोई बोल सकता है क्या? नहीं यार, ऐसी बात नहीं है आप लोगों. चलो, आफ्टर रिएक्ट जेस, अब आप बोलोगे कि यार रिएक्ट जेस तो कर लिया, अब क्या करें भाई? बता दे, तू ही बता दे. So after React.js, actually you need to learn Next.js. Okay, so Next.js is nothing but just a modified version of React.js. All the functionalities of React.js are there, along with some new features. Okay, so later on you'll be learning about stuff like server-side rendering and client-side rendering, different kind of stuff. But for now, just assume that React.js is parent, okay, and Next.js is the modern version of React.js. Okay, so Next.js is also important. Okay, I'm talking in terms of MERN stack. Okay, if you are becoming a MERN stack developer, then in that case, I'm talking about MERN stack, that is for front end. Usually, people prefer React.js, and React.js has a modern version that is known as Next.js. Okay, so that's all we need to know about front end. Okay, that's all we need to know about front end. And now you might be wondering, we have different like React.js is what? React.js is a library. It's not a framework. It's a library. We have frameworks also like AngularJS, we have Vue.js also, and different ones. All of them have same purpose, that is for front end development. That means it all depends on you. But if you want to become a MERN stack developer, then you need to learn React.js and Next.js. Okay, so in that case you need to learn React.js and Next.js. But if you are not sure what to learn, then you can go with mean stack also, that is Angular, or you can learn Vue.js also. Different kind of frameworks are there. But now let's talk about only React.js for merge stack developers, and I would recommend go for React.js. Why? Because it's just using HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Then Next.js is also using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and code is quite similar if I talk about normal HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So it's very easy to learn. And if you are a beginner and if you are lazy enough like me, so you can start with React.js. But yeah, it's totally up to you. If it's required or you find AngularJS better than React.js, then you can go with that. Okay, but at least for that also you need to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay, very basic thing is HTML, CSS, JavaScript. After that you can learn React.js, or you can learn AngularJS, or you can learn Vue.js. That's up to you. I would be teaching along with React.js. Okay, so I'll be assuming that you are learning React.js for Stack. Okay, so now front end part is completed. Okay, front end part is completed. Now let's talk about our backend. Okay, now let's talk about our backend. So what does backend exactly do for us? Okay, so let's talk about backend. So backend actually helps you connect with your database. Okay, that's it. And if you have a complex calculation, for example, you are using machine learning in your website, do you think every mobile or every computer can handle complex machine learning tasks? No, obviously not. So what will you do? You would be just creating a front end for your mobile and computer. You would be having your backend somewhere. That backend must have a very powerful CPU, which will handle all your machine learning tasks and just provide results to your front end. Are you getting my point? So first purpose is if you want to have some complex calculation, then you would be using backend. Second task of backend is to connect with the database. We connect with the database. So let me just write here. So first purpose is complex calculations are always done in the backend, right? Complex calculations. And second thing is it would allow you to connect with the database. So connect. Why do we need backend for database? Can anyone tell me? What's the issue if we directly connect our front end to database? What would happen if we don't have a backend, and we don't have any suppose complex calculation also? We just have a very basic application which has a database and has a front end. If we connect them directly, what would happen? यस एग्जैक्टली हैक हो जाएगा. ठीक है. अगर आपको मैं बोलूं कि चलो ठीक है, मेरे लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल बैकएंड इज लाइक तिजोरी. ओके, बैकएंड इज लाइक तिजोरी. तिजोरी को इंग्लिश में क्या कहते हैं मुझे याद नहीं, बट इट्स लाइक तिजोरी वेयर यू आर कीपिंग योर गोल्ड. ओके, गोल्ड इज योर डेटाबेस, एंड you can just say Tijori is also your database. Now the key is actually your backend. If you don't have the key, you must not allow anyone to access that. Okay, so backend is like the key which would allow you to verify that yeah, I am Harshal Jain, so I can see my own data from database. You are somebody else, so you can see your own data. This is like a key. Okay, I am the key. I am Harshal Jain, so I can get my own data. You are someone else, you are user one, so you would get your data. It's like that. Okay, so connection for database, connect database. We'll be discussing more about this now, but यार पहले पानी पी लेते हैं. हम्म. लॉकर. ठीक है ठीक है, जज मत करना. ओके, चलो चलो कंटिन्यू. सो अब एक बार फिर रिवाइज करते हैं कि फ्रंट एंड और बैक एंड व्हाट वाज देयर पर्पस. So suppose again you have a website like Instagram, you have a page like Instagram which has your user profile picture, which has your name. For example, I would just write Harshal. Okay, then you have some good about अपनी एक्स को टॉन्ट मारना या कुछ भी. ओके, लोग लिखते हैं, सो लिख सकते हो. एंड देन वी हैव some extra details like some links etc, so some link also. So I'll just say link. Okay, then after that Then after that, you have some more some more posts also. I'm sorry, some posts also. अंकल जी आप पानी पी लीजिए. Right. So this is the front end, right? So how do you think this data is coming? So initially you can assume that this is blank. Okay, so what I would do is I would just assume that initially this is blank. Okay, you don't have anything. Okay, you don't have anything. This is a blank page, right? This is a very blank page. And I also have a backend also. Okay, ठीक है. I also have a backend and it has something. Okay, you can assume it has something. You don't need to do, you don't need to know what's exactly in the backend. Yeah, backend, it just contains all of your APIs. We'll understand what is an API now. So this is your backend, this is your front end. Okay, so FT and BK. Okay, and then we have our database also. Okay, so for the database, this is suppose our database. Now, let's visit Instagram again. Okay, so you can see, by the way, this is my Instagram. So you can see that here we have a username. This is very important. Okay, this is very important. We have a username here. According to this username, you'll always get your data. And it's not only about me. If I put username of any other user whom I am following, or like I have access to, like if you follow someone or if their profile is public, you can see their profile. Okay, so right now let's talk about our own profile. That is, you are providing a username like this. So I'll come back here and here I'll say +1 for DP. Actually, छोड़ो यार, बेइज्जती हो जाएगी मेरी, मैं नहीं बोलूंगा अभी. बाद में बात करते हैं डीपी के बारे में. Okay, so hmm, here what I have requested is I want data for which user. So एक लाइन बना देते हैं. I want data for which user? I want data for this user, Harshal underscore 3011. Okay, I want data for this user, and I would ask for this from the backend. Backend would verify that whether I am allowed to see this user's data or not. And in some case, I am allowed. Either it's my profile or I'm following this person, or like this person's profile is public. So you are allowed. Okay, you are allowed. That means you are allowed to get data for Harshal underscore 3011. First of all, this is verified. Since you are allowed, so backend would go to the database and again forward this name, search for this name, Harshal underscore 3011. You can assume backend actually, sorry, database actually contains a table. Okay, a table of users. Okay, it contains a table of users, and in the form of rows and columns. You can assume that database is actually containing a table. So assume that in this row, Harshal's data is here. So what the database will do, it would first of all find that data, find the specific data, and then send back to the backend. Okay, so what would happen? Backend would actually receive a big object. This is known as a JavaScript object. So backend would actually receive a JavaScript object which would contain my name, email, ID, and profile picture and post also. So all the data would be sent back to the backend. Now backend would decide what must be sent to the front end. So now I am going to assume, suppose everything is allowed. That means since I am viewing my profile, so I am allowed to get everything from the backend. So backend would just send that response is okay. So response RES, you will be hearing this a lot. So result is okay. Suppose I would just say result equals okay or true. Okay, the result is true. That means you got the result, and then you would just get the data from the backend. So you would just send the data to the front end. Okay, so you send your data, right? So that's how exactly these three work together. Okay, I hope there is no confusion. Please ask me again if you have. फॉलोअर बढ़ाने का तरीका थोड़ा कैजुअल है. सर कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा. ओके, मैं फिर से एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. मैं फिर से एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ, ठीक है। सो एक और एग्जांपल लेते हैं, किसी और चीज का एग्जांपल लेते हैं। लेट्स सी इन शॉर्ट, ओके। चलो इसी इसी चीज को मैं फिर से समझाता हूँ, फिर से समझते हैं हम इसको। सो अगर आपको, मैं अगर इंस्टाग्राम का एग्जांपल दूं, ठीक है, अगर आपको किसी का डेटा लेना है, फॉर एग्जांपल आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस यूजर, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस यूजर। Suppose I am assuming that if I am viewing my own profile, that means if I want to view my own profile, I can view it, but someone else can't view this. Suppose this is the restriction, very basic restriction. That means only I can see my profile picture, only I can update the data, only I can see the data. In some websites, you might have this kind of thing. Like I think in some websites, you can't see others' data. For example, you are using Amazon. Can you see other person's data? No, you cannot. Okay, so let's assume Amazon. Okay, that would be better. So I'm going to assume Amazon. Okay, so let's say we are talking about Amazon, better example. So Amazon is like it would be containing different data, right? First of all, I would be just saying in Amazon, I might be having a profile. Okay, I would be having a profile in Amazon with some email. Okay, so some email is like xyz at the rate gmail.com. Okay, so gmail.com. Okay, suppose this is the Gmail from which I have signed in, okay, in Amazon. Suppose I want to see the data of some other user. Can I see that? No. But if I want to see my own data, I can see that. Okay, so first of all, this must be clear. Now let's talk again about the front end. Okay, so again you have the profile page in Amazon. Okay, profile page which must be getting some data. So what it would do is it would first of all go to backend of Amazon and then the database of Amazon. Okay, so you have the database also, and you have the backend also, and you have the front end also, right? Now what would it do? It would simply say, I want data for which user? I want this data for xyz at the rate gmail.com. Suppose I want to get data for this user. The backend would simply check if this user is me or not. That means if I want to get my own data or not, that would be verified by backend. And we have some access tokens which we'll generate to verify users. Don't need to know that right now. But yeah, just assume that backend would check if this ID which you are looking for is your ID or not. If this is not your ID, so backend would directly send a response as something like false. Okay, you would assume that it would send a false response. Okay, that means you are not allowed to get data for this user. I hope I am clear. If this is not my ID, but suppose if this is my ID, then what would happen? So backend would again first of all check that is this your ID. So yes, this is my ID. So backend would again request for data from database. Database would look for the data in its table. So suppose this is a table. Okay, suppose this is actually a table which looks like this. Okay, and it has a list of thousands of crores of users which are available on Amazon. It would find for that specific user. Suppose here I have my data, here I have my data. So database would return this to the backend, and backend would send this as a response to front end. That's it. That means it would backend would return true along with the data. That means user data. That means if you want to view your own profile. Okay, so can't the database do just like a built-in function? Okay, so some modern database actually have those kind of securities, but still backend is first of all used for complex calculation. And second thing is, let's just skip backend. Okay, let's just skip backend. So usually what happens is, in general terms, I'm talking about if you are building a merge stack application or anything. Okay. So your front end would be where? Your front end would be suppose in React.js, right? That's what I told you. So this is your React.js website. It's built on React. And suppose there is no way, by the way, you can directly connect your database like this, but still I'm assuming that I've connected. Okay. So my database is connected with the फ्रंट एंड. दैट मीन्स वी डोंट हैव अ बैक एंड. हटाओ इसको, ये बीच के इंसान को हटाओ, ठीक है. नाउ सपोज आई वांट टू get data of some other user or I want to update data of some other user. So there is no way in the database, for example, we use MongoDB as a database. You can also use MySQL. Uh, you can also use MySQL. We have different kind of databases. Suppose I use MongoDB in one stack. So there is no way in database to actually judge is this your data or my data or anyone else's data. So it's actually very less secure in itself. Okay, so you can't judge, the database does not have that brain. They can't decide that is this your data or not your data. Okay, so backend would actually help you first of all verify whose data it is that person allowed to get data from database? If not, so backend would stop the process. But if that person is allowed, then backend would forward that to database. Okay, so that's why backend is important. So PHP or Django Django with Python for backend, which is better? Personally, I think PHP is a bit older. Like a lot of companies are actually shifting from PHP to other languages. Like Django is very popular because nowadays a lot of companies use machine learning, and for that, obviously, you need support of Python because Python is the best tool for machine learning and for deep learning or for AI. So for that case also, and in modern technology, I would say that Django is a bit better because it has modern tools and it supports machine learning, very important thing. Okay, but yeah, PHP is also great, but a lot of companies are actually shifting from PHP to Django. Okay, and I'm also not saying Node.js because Node.js also does not have a very good support for machine learning. If you are if you are someone who is into machine learning specifically, or if you want to build something like a chatbot or something, obviously you would be using Python Django. That would be the best option. But generally all these work same, and I think the fastest one among them is actually Node.js. Okay, that's what people say, Node.js is the fastest one. But if you want to perform machine learning tasks and all rounder, you can say, then Django is the right skill for you, right backend for you. So it all depends on your task. Is the data in database encrypted? No, it's not encrypted. You have to encrypt it using backend. So what you actually do is, if I give you an example, okay, so good example of encryption. What you do is actually, it's not an encryption, it's actually hashing. I can't tell you the exact difference because I'm not into that. But yeah, you can just say, if I talk about my password, okay, if I have a database, and inside the database, suppose we have a row which contains my name, okay, which suppose contains my name, Harshal, and suppose the email as viraj014 at the rate gmail.com. And it has data like age is, suppose you can pass any age, suppose मैं 45 साल का हूँ, ठीक है, and you have your password also. Okay, so now in your database, suppose in case your database gets hacked, भाड़ में जाए front end, and also just ignore the backend. If I directly hack the database, then that would be great, right? That would be great. We don't, the hacker would directly go to the database. Why would they be looking for the front end or the back end? Good question. So if your password is not encrypted, if your password, I would say it's hashed actually. So we use hashing algorithms. Suppose this was my password as J123. Okay, at J123. So if a hacker gets access to my data and other users' data, they can easily get this, and they can easily now log in from the front end. They have access for the database. They can see my ID and my password. They can easily now log in from the front end and make some manipulation. Nobody can now judge who actually made the manipulation, right? So that's why password instead of this is actually hashed into some format, but you can assume that it's unrecognizable. Okay, so X, Y, Z, A, B, C, some unrecognizable format. So you can't actually recognize this very easily. No one can recognize this except the backend. Okay, only backend can recognize this and can approve further on this password. When you log in, password is compared. Suppose, for example, what would happen? Suppose I'm explaining you the login part. Okay, suppose I'm explaining you the login part. So again, you are trying to log in. This is your front end. Okay, and you have an email, you have a password field, and then you have a button here, right? You have a button here. Now once you log in, your data is sent to the backend. What is your data? So you suppose have your email, and password. ठीक है, you are sending this data, and an API would also be called named as login API. So in backend we have different APIs. API is just known as application programming interface. Okay, so I'll explain this again API part just a second, but first of all let's complete this. So suppose I'm just saying I'm calling the login API along with this data, email and password. So here, if I come to my backend, what does the backend do? It would first of all look for which API you are calling, which API. You are calling for login API. Suppose we are calling for login API. So backend now knows, yes, login API is called. Now whatever code you have written inside login API, logic inside login API would be called. In short, what does login API would do is, it would first of all verify email. That means the email which you have provided is available on the database or not. Suppose if you are trying to log in with that email which is not available in my database, that means you don't exist, you are not registered to my platform. So first of all, we verified email. If email is not verified, backend would send a response, invalid credential. Okay, invalid. Okay. Similarly, password is also verified. Now, how the password is verified? So I'll just write verify password. How is password verified? So the password which you provided while logging in is HJ123. And the password which is saved in the database is XYZABC123. That means some hashed format. This is known as salting also, password salting. Yes, someone has mentioned data breaches looking for password stored within the database. Okay. So here you can see that we have XYZABC123. Now you actually make comparison between these two, between this and this. So backend has some logic, and in Node.js, if I talk about Node.js, we use a package named as bcrypt. Okay, so what does bcrypt do? If I just talk about Node.js, other languages have different tools, but what does bcrypt do is it would just convert this HJ123 into this and compare. If both of them match, then your password is correct. Okay, that means that tool will manage everything. That tool will compare both of these. Okay, if they are same, that is they are same. Yes, they are same. So if they are same, then you are logged in. So backend would send yes, logged in. Okay, you are logged in because you have provided correct email and password. But if you have provided wrong, for example, if you provided wrong password like HJ1234, are they same? No, they are not same. So you would just say not logged in. I hope you got how the login part works exactly and how the data is secured. In the database also you would be using hashing or encryption, different kind of things which you would be using. By default it's not encrypted. You have to add encryption on yourself. For example, if you talk about WhatsApp, it has end-to-end encryption. That means only you and the message and the person which receives the message can see that message. Okay, nobody in between can see the message. I think government has some access, but usually the data is encrypted. Okay, right. So now I have covered a very basic thing, that is how the backend works. Now if I talk about merge stack, if I talk about merge stack, what's the exact skills which you would be needing? So first of all, you know that we talked about, if I talk about merge stack, okay, if you want to be a other type of developer, then there are different skills, but generally I prefer merge stack because for beginners merge stack contains JavaScript. Okay, there is no new skill, because if you talk about backend, you have option like PHP, you have option like Python, you have option like Node.js. Why I prefer Node.js? Because Node.js contains JavaScript, Python does not contain JavaScript, PHP does not contain JavaScript, so you have to learn extra things. Okay, although they have different benefits, but for beginners who are lazy enough like me, like I learned after that. Okay, obviously I learned Django also after that, but yeah, as if you are a beginner, you started with HTML and then CSS, then JavaScript, and then in merge stack you have actually learned what? First of all, your database would be MongoDB. Merge stack stands for MongoDB. Then you have Express.js. So this is again used in your backend, Express.js. And with JS, you can know that Express also uses JavaScript code. And then we have React.js, and then we have Node.js. That's it. Now, anyone can tell me what is the purpose of all these four in short? Will you provide notes? I think notes are not needed that much, but still I'll share my notes into, like, I would just share it in my GitHub profile. Okay, just wait. So, what I'll do is at the end of the session, I'll upload the notes in the form of PNG format. So you can just go here. You can just go here. You can just search for github.com/VIRAJJ014. You can go here, or you can contact the host if you want. But I think you can visit here. Now, here you have to simply go to the repositories, and I would upload the repository with some name. Okay, I'll just name it as Roorkee session. That would be great. Okay, Roorkee roadmap session. I'll just name it something like that. Yes, root key roadmap to web development, something like that. So you can visit that repository. Okay, let me just create that anyhow. Okay, let me just create this. So I'll just create a repo. And one more thing, guys. Before that, good idea. One more thing which you would be learning is actually version controlling. So what is version controlling? Version controlling is like you wrote a code. Okay, you wrote a front end or a back end or something. Okay, so what does version controlling do for you? Okay, so version controlling is actually very helpful when you want to share your code to someone. Like, I want to share pictures with you. Okay, I want to share notes with you. I want to share my HTML code, CSS code, JavaScript code. That means I have a very big project. I want to share this with you. How will I share this? One method is I would just make a WinRAR file, archive that, and then share that to you, and then you would be extracting it. That's a very long procedure. And suppose I am also making an update and you are also making an update. Now, how will you just make comparisons? So for all those cases, if you are working together in collaborations and if you want to share code to someone, so you would be always using version controlling. In version controlling, we have Git. Okay, we have Git. Git actually helps you to learn version controlling. So after learning the front end, then you learn this much skill, then you'll be learning about version controlling. Okay, now let me first upload the code into my GitHub, then I'll explain more. Okay, so for now, guys, I'll just first of all create a repo, and then later on at the end of the session I'll share that. Okay, so Roorkee web dev roadmap. Okay, that would be better. Yes, that's fine. So now just save this, create repository. Yes, so I've just created a repository. So now, guys, what you have to do is I'll just share this in the chat also, but you can just visit here github.com/VIRAJJ014. In the repositories, you would find Roorkee Web Dev Roadmap. Here, you would find the complete notes. If you want the notes, you can check out the notes from here. Right now, it's empty, but at the end of this video, I'll upload it here. Okay, so yeah, I'll just share this also in the live chat so you can take it from there also. Yes, perfect. So, guys, I have shared a link. Please check that link if visible. I think I've shared the link. Yes. So the notes would be available here. If you want to check, you can check it from here. Right? Okay. All right. So, guys, now let's continue with the remaining part. What have I written here? A lot of people are actually now confused. What are these things which I have written right now? Okay. So I'll explain them now in brief. Okay. So let's come back here. And we wrote some stuff here. If I'm talking about merge stack, then I'm talking about this. So what are these? Okay, so generally in merge stack is actually known as full stack first of all. So if I talk about merge stack, MERN, this is known as full stack development. That means you have both front end and back end development. In merge stack, you have a front end, you have a front end, You have a backend, you have a backend, and you have a database. So DB. Now in Merge Stack, I hope now you're familiar with all these three terms: front end, back end, and development. In Merge Stack specifically, what skills do we use? So in front end, you actually use React, JS, or Next.js. Nowadays, Next.js is used instead of React.js. Okay, it's empty. Yes, right now the nodes are empty. At the end of this video, I'll upload that. Okay, don't worry. Yes, I'll upload that at the end of the session. You'll get it. Okay. So front end is React.js and Next.js. Now, if I talk about backend, what does the backend contain in Merge Stack? It's actually Node.js. Okay. So Node.js will be your backend in Merge Stack, Node.js. Plus, inside Node.js, you'd be writing your code in Express.js. Okay. So Express.js is not a very big thing. Like you will be learning along with Node.js, and it's helping you to write less code. That's what it does. Okay, so you'd be writing Express.js code inside Node.js. Okay, so Express.js. What is your database? Your database is MongoDB. That's it, right? This is it. That's what is Stack exactly. Okay, so now I hope you know what is front end, back end, and database, how they would be working all together. Now you might be wondering that why we use MongoDB. We have MySQL. Why we use MongoDB? So the purpose of MongoDB is, first of all, MongoDB directly stores data. Your data, like I told you, I'm Harshal Jain, my age is this, my email is this, my password is this, my gender is this. All this data, if I talk about MySQL, is stored in the table column format. In MongoDB, it's actually stored in the JavaScript object format. That means JavaScript is again inside this database also. In MySQL, there is no JavaScript, there is no language. But in MongoDB, there is JavaScript readable code. Okay, this is JavaScript readable code. If I give you an example, I'll just take you to my MongoDB atlas, which I always use. So what you can do is I'll just take you to a database. So I'll just use it for project purposes. So I'll just take you to MongoDB atlas. Okay, so you don't need to do this, but I'm just giving you an explanation. Okay, so if I click on sign in, and okay, I'll just log in with some account. Can you share the link through WhatsApp group? I think the group host will forward that. Okay, so this is my MongoDB, and you don't need to do that. Just try to observe what I'm trying to do. Okay, so I'll just show you a database, how exactly it looks in MongoDB. Okay, and I'll just go to browse collections, and I was just building a task manager app, a very basic application just for a project at Geeks for Geeks. So you can see that it's storing some data, it's showing me some data, and here you can see password is what. You can't just what's my password. Suppose I am a hacker, I've got access to this database. Can I now see the password? No, I can't see the password. Although I can delete this data, that's some specific thing, but I can't see things. I can't see this. Okay, so here, if I just show you in some better format, I think there is some option here. If I go to edit, hmm, indexes. Okay, if I go to the indexes, and I think exactly we had a method in MongoDB to show data in the form of rows and columns, but right now you can see that this is kind of data in this format. Data is actually stored, and if I want to just copy this document, if I just copy this document, okay, and let's try to paste it somewhere. Okay, suppose try to paste it here. So you can actually see this is some format. Okay, for better purpose, what I'll do is I'll just write it here. Okay, I'll just write it here itself into my page. That would be better. Okay, yes. So I'll just create a text field, and here I'll just show you some data. Okay, and I'll just do this. Okay, so what is exactly this? Okay, so this is actually known as JavaScript object. Okay, this is a JavaScript object. Later on, when you'll be learning about JavaScript, you'll know about this. Okay, so if I write it in better format, that would be better. I think. Anyways, later on you can just change it, but right now you can assume that this is a JavaScript format which is containing what fields like name, id. Okay, this is your id, for example. So this is your id, this is your id, this is your name, and then this is your password. Then what? Then this is your email, and then at the end you have some extra fields. Okay, so this is known as JavaScript object notation. So in Node.js, use start plus for making it more visible. MongoDB contains parent-child relation. Okay, okay. Yes. Okay. So now what I was saying is, in this format, MongoDB stores data. This is known as JavaScript object notation data. Okay. This is a single object, but along with this, you have multiple objects for multiple users, right? All of them together are actually known as an array, right? Array contains multiple elements. You can say in JavaScript, array contains multiple elements, like we are containing multiple objects. If you learn JavaScript, you will understand more about this. So we are covering all the objects. This is a single object. Along with this, we have multiple objects. All of them are actually stored in a format named as JSON format. Okay, JSON format. So this JSON format is very easily readable by any language of MERN stack. Okay, so data is actually stored in the form of JSON. Actually, in MongoDB, it's known as BSON, but at the end, it's JSON. Okay, so BSON is similar to JSON, but yeah, at the end, you must know that MongoDB stores in format which is similar to JSON. That means when you are trying to get data from React to Node and from Node to database, all of them is in JavaScript. So there is no conversion, very less conversion. So at the end, what happens? Time is saved. Time is saved. Very less conversion. That means if you have very big data, so conversion time will be very much, right? So for saving that, we actually use this format. Okay, that means it's readable by JavaScript. That means you don't need to make any kind of conversion. If I talk about MySQL, in MySQL, data is not stored in this JSON format. Data is actually stored in table row format. So I personally not coded in MySQL, so I can't tell you much about that. But yeah, it's not the JSON format, so you have to make conversions. You have to make conversions, and it's a little bit difficult. Why it's difficult? Because in MySQL and in MongoDB, there is a very basic difference. Okay, so first of all, we have two terms here. SQL, I'm talking about databases now. So we have first term named as SQL. Second term is NoSQL. NoSQL. Can anyone tell me the difference between these two? Single queued list. Okay. Okay. No idea. Okay. So SQL first of all stands for structured query language. So if I give you example of SQL, give example of SQL is MySQL. Okay. So first of all, the example of this is MySQL, and NoSQL is again the opposite. Okay, the opposite. So NoSQL has an example, that is MongoDB. Okay, so MongoDB comes into the category of NoSQL, and if I talk about SQL, MySQL comes in the category of this SQL. If I give you more example, I think yes, we have PostgreSQL, we have SQLite, which are examples of SQL. If I talk about NoSQL, we have Couchbase, we have Cassandra, which are examples of NoSQL. All of these are databases, but let's take very basic, that is MySQL and MongoDB. What is the difference? So first of all, in SQL, you store data in table row format. Okay, you store data in table row format. That's it. In NoSQL, you store data in object format. In object format, you would be storing data in object format. Okay. Now, in SQL, we actually follow, you can see data increases like this. Okay, data increases like this. So we actually follow vertical scaling. Okay, we actually follow vertical scaling, right? We actually follow vertical scaling. In MongoDB, data can increase in any order. That means you can increase, like you can have multiple databases, but in MySQL, only one single database would be there for each kind of category. That means all users would be in single database. But in MongoDB, we can create different databases for different users and are interconnected with each other. Okay, so the benefit of MongoDB is it has horizontal scaling. That means you can have multiple MongoDB databases all connected to together and they would work as a single DB. But in MySQL, you can create different databases, but they would be acting as different databases. Okay, so horizontal scaling actually. So that's what it actually makes a better choice. NoSQL a better choice, but definitely in some cases you would be using SQL, in some cases you would be using NoSQL. But a very basic difference, that is MySQL stores data in data column format, row column format. NoSQL actually stores data in the object format. SQL supports vertical scaling. That means you can increase data so on in the vertical format. And then if I talk about NoSQL, if I talk about NoSQL, that is MongoDB, it can store data in any format. If I talk about horizontal scaling, that means suppose my database is full, it's in India. I can create another database in South Africa or anywhere, and they would act as one single database. How it's beneficial? If I have multiple databases and if I have one single database, what's the benefit of having multiple databases? So मैं एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ. If you have a single database, suppose in India you have a single database, और उस database में आग लग गई, क्या करोगे? Right? So all data would be lost. Okay, all data would be lost. If you have multiple databases, so अगर एक जगह का database नहीं चल पा रहा है due to some reasons, at least others would be working. Okay, so the benefit of this is you won't be like bankrupt completely. At least you'll have some amount with you. Okay, if you have multiple accounts of banks, if you have multiple sources of income, then you would have at least one source remaining. अगर बाकी जगह आग लग गई है तो at least एक जगह तो बचेगी. So it actually gives you more obviously if there is a very huge customer base and no one can access their data, so it won't be graded, right? That's why we have multiple places where you can just store different kind of databases. Like it would be beneficial, right? If the database from different users are interconnected, wouldn't it be easy to hack? No, it won't be easy because you would be storing data in hashed format. Okay, so like hacking is always possible. In some case hackers find a way, but we have different kind of things. Like when you are talking about a database, in database, let me just give you a very basic example how it's secure. Like I know that I can access this. First thing is I logged in with my account. Okay, in MySQL it might be different. If I talk about MongoDB, first of all, only user which has access to this Gmail account can access the database. Second thing is you can go to network access. You can see here we have an IP address. Right now I've allowed everyone to access my database, which must not be the case. I'll just delete this for now. What you can do is, if you're talking about your database, you can allow a set of computers who can access your database. That means my backend would be using the database, right? So I would just say whatever is the IP address of my backend. For example, you have hosted your backend in AWS, you would get an IP address from there. So you have to add that IP address here. Okay, so right now my backend is suppose in my local computer. So I would just add the IP address of my local computer. So if front end is trying to contact with the backend, and backend does not have the access of the database, so backend can't access the database. Okay, so you also have to add access from here. So this is the IP address of your backend, wherever is your backend available. Okay, so this is also an extra layer of security. That means any other IP address, if the hacker has some other computer, obviously they might be having some other IP address, now they can't access your database at any cost. Okay, so that's the difference. The IP address also plays a very major role, networking also plays a very major role, and the credential from which we are logged into your backend, where your backend is available, that's also playing a major role. But very important thing, only this IP address is allowed to access my backend. Very easy. So now it's very more secure. Okay, so these are some secure steps. Please repeat the hacking part. Okay, so again, if I give you an example of MongoDB, what actually happens is I have my database, right? I have my database, I have my backend, and I have my front end. So suppose a group of people are actually using this. Okay, a group of people are actually using this. So what actually happens here is we can add more IP address. Yes, exactly. Suppose I have four friends. Okay, suppose I have four friends or four people in my team. Okay, so four people in my team. Suppose one of them is a front end developer and another one is a back end developer. Actually, let's say we have three people for better understanding. Okay, then we have a DB, database manager. Okay, that means one person will manage the database. Now, you know that front end does not need to have access of the database, right? But backend needs the access of database. Suppose the front end has an IP like 123.123.123 and backend has an IP of 456, 456 and 456. I would just say in the database, I would just add this IP address into the access part. That means only this IP address can access my database. This front end can't access my database, or anyone can't access my database. Or if I give you a better example, suppose a hacker created a clone of my backend. Okay, somehow they got my backend code. They got my backend code, and hacker simply created a clone. So suppose this is my OG. Okay, this is the OG. Okay, I'll just highlight it with yellow. Okay, so this is suppose the OG backend, original backend, which is my backend, and this is done by the hacker backend. So hacker backend is again the clone of my backend. Okay, what would actually happen? Same things would be here. Same things would be here, but the IP address would be different. IP would be something else. Suppose IP would be 789, 789, and 789. Okay, 789. So now in my database, I have specified that only IP address 456, 456, 456. If you have multiple IP address, you can also list that. That means you are just giving a few people authority to access my database. If suppose this backend tries to access the database, what would happen? Since this IP address is not added into this database, hacker won't be allowed to access. Okay, hacker won't be allowed to access. Okay, so now I hope you understood why IP address also plays a major role in the security. So you would be having different IP addresses, and you have to add IP addresses into your database so that you can make it more secure. Okay, definitely there are different steps other than IP address also. So you'd be learning more about that when you become a full stack developer, right? All right. So guys, now let's continue with the remaining part. So I told you how you can exactly code with front end, back end, and some security steps. Now, very important, what were the projects which I did to actually become a good developer? Definitely, I'm not perfect, but what were the steps which I actually took to become a good developer? So when I just began with like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, one thing which I did always was creating projects. Okay, so like you can watch thousands of tutorials on YouTube on theory part, but if you don't know how to code, how you can just create a project, then it's not worth it. Okay, so what you can do is once you learn a skill, for example, you can start with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? You started with that. So what you would do is you would just talk about, now I'm going to talk about projects. So what are the good projects which you can do? So projects, the first thing is you learned HTML and CSS. First of all, you learned these two. So you can just build very basic websites like portfolio. You can create your own portfolio. And if I give you an example, portfolio website, like you'd be creating your resume CV, right? So similar to this, you can create your own portfolio website. If I give you an example, um, yes, I have hosted my portfolio here. So this is a very old website which I created a few years ago. But yeah, you can see that this is my website. Okay, so this only uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Very basic website which I created a long time ago, and just for showcasing some projects. And this was actually again some project, just a project which I created this website for. So you can see that, yeah, this is a portfolio website, and it only uses HTML and CSS. And you can see that without JavaScript also it looks fine. Okay, it looks fine. Okay, so that's it. And you can create on your own websites. You can just do it like this. You can create it like this, HTML and CSS. So first project which you can always create is a portfolio. Second is, if you have learned HTML, CSS, you can create a clone of Netflix. That's what I did. So I created a clone of Netflix, and one more thing, that is Amazon. Okay, Amazon. That's it. I created clone of these two. Now once you have created these kind of projects, after that you will be learning about JavaScript, right? Where you hosted this website? I actually hosted it on no, Vercel. It's actually free tool. When you learn about one stack, later on once you create a complete project, you would be hosting it somewhere. So for the front end part, that is in React.js or Next.js, you can use Vercel as a free platform. And for the backend, either you can use AWS. AWS would give you a free subscription of 1 year. You can use AWS for backend hosting, or else you can use a tool named as cyclic.sh. That is for Node.js backend. I'm talking about Node.js backend. Okay, if you are using any other backend, I'm not sure, but for Node.js backend, you can use cyclic.sh or AWS for hosting there. And for front end, free hosting. So you can use Vercel, or you can use Netlify. You can also use Heroku, and also like for normal HTML, CSS, you can use GitHub Pages. But for React.js or Next.js, you can't use GitHub Pages. You need to use some platform like Vercel or Heroku, right? So you can search about this on YouTube. You'll find dozens of tutorial how to host this for free. Okay. Are you talking about my own website, or you're talking about the platform? Okay, I'll just write the resources here. I'll just write the resources. If you want to host this, if you want to host this project, what you can do is you can use GitHub Pages. Okay, so you can search about GitHub Pages. This is a free tool which you get when you create a GitHub account. So GitHub Pages. Okay, so you would be hosting your websites for free on GitHub Pages. Front end part, I'm not talking about the back end. Okay, now suppose you learned HTML, CSS. Now after this you would be learning about JavaScript, right? You mastered JavaScript, so you can create one project which contains all three: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like you can create tic tac toe game. And one more thing which I created, actually I have a total complete playlist of JavaScript. Let me just show you. It's available at Geeks for Geeks. um, if you go to the playlist, you would get all of my tutorials here. Okay, you can check out this channel also. I usually come live here and post videos here. So this is the official channel of Geeks for Geeks. And here you can see we have JavaScript project for beginners to advanced. So if you have learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, you can follow this series, right? You can follow this series. So I have built many projects like build a stopwatch, build an analog clock, and then you can see we have build a calculator, build a JavaScript guess the color game, and then we have tic tac toe game, we have ping pong game. Okay, then we have rat in a maze game, then we have a simple tip calculator, and then palindrome checker, and then responsive nav bar in nav toggler using JavaScript, and we have a BMI calculator, registration form with validation using JavaScript, and real-time search bar. So you can see I've created a lot of projects here. You can check out these projects if you want, and very helpful for beginners. Okay, so you can check out this playlist also. You would visit the channel and you would find everything. Yeah, you can check out this. Okay, now I'll come back. So yeah, you can build any project you want, but at least two, three projects which all use HTML, CSS, JavaScript together. Okay. Now after this, guys, you would be learning what you would be learning. All obviously you would be hosting it again on GitHub Pages. Okay. You can host these projects also on GitHub Pages. Now, if I talk about React.js, again you can create a clone of any website, same projects. You can create same projects which you created here, same for React.js. Okay, so same projects, you can create same projects in React.js, which I explained above. You can create same projects in React.js because it's a combination of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? And one more good project can be like you can create Instagram clone, Instagram clone. Okay, Instagram. And again, you can create like clone of gigs for geeks also, so GFG. Okay, so this is for React.js, and you want to host it into, you would be hosting it into where you can use Vercel, you can use Vercel. Okay, and you can also use Netlify, Netlify. You can search about this on Google, you would find these. Okay, Netlify. So this is for free hosting, I'm talking about free hosting. Okay, what is the name of the YouTube channel? Okay, I'll just do one thing. Anyways, just give me a minute, I'll share. Yes, I have shared. All right, so I'll come back. And here you can see that I have mentioned some platforms, that is Vercel or Netlify, which is for free front-end hosting. Okay, now if I talk about backend, okay, जगह नहीं बची है तो मैं इधर mention कर देता हूँ थोड़ा सा zoom out करके. Okay, just give me a second. Okay. Right, now I think this is fine. So yes, where were we? We were talking about backend now. Okay, so now you have hosted your front end. Suppose you created some front end, and now you would be learning about backend. So your backend must be, if I talk about merge stack, your backend is on Node.js, right? So your Node.js put backend would be created, and here you would be creating some projects, like you can create backend of a social media platform like Instagram. Again, you can create a backend of Instagram. Okay, so Instagram, and I don't recommend application like Spotify for backend, because obviously you won't be having that much musics, but yeah, still you can use that because you'd be sending some media files also, so that would be also a good project. So if you talk about backend, you can create backend of Spotify, that means music, sending and receiving music from the backend. Okay, and then what else you can do is you can create backend of basic backends like task manager, to do app, or different kind of applications. Okay, so task manager. So these are some very basic projects which you can do. And definitely you can check one more thing. I think we have a playlist also. Did this, so 15 days of backend. I think at the end I created some projects. So these are also some beginner level backend projects if you are using Node.js. Okay, now these are all the things now where you can host the backend. So again, backend is hosted separately. So you would be hosting your backend into you'd be hosting your backend into Cyclic. Okay, you would be using Cyclic, a website named as Cyclic, Cyclic .sh. Okay, cyclic.sh, you can search about it, or you can use Amazon Web Services, AWS. These are very two great tools, and you would get free subscriptions from these. And cyclic.sh is forever free for smaller use, and AWS is free if you have a big backend also. If you'd get 1 year of free access to AWS, but after that you'd be charged for that, so be prepared for that. Okay, so it depends on your project also. That's what I wanted to say. Okay, so these were all the things which I wanted to talk about here. And you can see, if you want to take some screenshot, you can definitely take some screenshot, or else I would also provide the source code. Okay, so guys, I think 5 minutes are remaining. If you have any remaining doubts, you can ask me. And one more thing, please fill the form of the attendance we have shared in the chat section. You will find that in the chat section. So please fill that, and else you would be marked absent. Okay. Can we use render for backend? No, I'm not sure what is exactly render. All right. So, guys, if you have any doubts, you can ask me. Can blockchain be used for backend? Yes, blockchain is okay. But before blockchain, let me explain you one more thing. Suppose if you became a web developer, full stack developer, after that you want to switch to mobile app development. You learned React.js, right? You now know React.js. Okay, if I'm talking about merge stack development, there's a one edge for merge stack development. If you learn merge stack development, first of all, everything is JavaScript. And if you want to switch to mobile, what you can do is, After learning the complete merge stack, creating these projects, you can learn React Native. Okay, React Native. So what does React Native do? It would actually help you create Android and iOS applications. So very easily with the same backend, same Node.js, Express.js, same backend. Everything would be same. Your just front end would be changed. Your front end previously was React.js for website, and for React Native, this is your mobile app development field. Okay, so if you want to switch to mobile app development after web developments, you can easily learn React Native. That's the benefit. Okay. Right. So someone actually asked me about one more thing, that is blockchain. Okay, how is blockchain? Okay, so let me just tell you what's exactly blockchain. Acha, someone actually, one more thing, that is someone mentioned, that is how is this session related with Python. Okay, just let me just tell you, your front end would be still in React.js, your back end would be actually in Python. That means you'd be writing code instead of Node.js, you'd be writing code in Django if you talk about Python. That's it. And front end also, either you can go with React.js or any other framework, that's totally up to you. But for backend, you'd be using Django, or you can use Fast API, anything which is related to Python. The logic is exactly same. It all depends on your technology which you want to use. Okay, so it's totally specific to you. And if I talk about comparisons, if you want to build ML specific projects, okay, if you want to build ML specific projects, then you can always go for Django. If you want to build fast projects like real time chat application, if you want to get real time data, if you want to build streaming application like Netflix, you stream movies there, for that you use Node.js. Okay, so different purpose for different backend, right? Now we had a doubt for one more thing, sir. How does chat GPT work? Exactly, I'm not sure how does it work, what framework they use, because they haven't disclosed it. Okay. Sir, I'm in first year, so should start with web or DSA? I would request you to please manage both, because currently in this year, if I talk about this year, companies are also asking you something more. If you just know DSA, then it's very difficult, because like you must have done some projects, internships, or hackathons also. You have hackathons also, you can participate on that. So if you are talking about difference between them, so web development is used for creating websites and DSA is used for solving complex problems. Okay, so you must learn both of these and manage both of these. It's very important. Okay, like you can't just skip anyone, you have to learn both of these. How to create a chatbot easily? Okay, so if I talk about Node.js, what you can actually use is, your front end would be same, like you don't need anything extra, you'd be just creating a UI for chatbot, that's it. If I talk about backend, the main chatbot is, like main purpose of chatbot is to just give you suggestion on your search query. So whatever you search on front end would be sent to the backend. Okay, sent to the backend. Suppose this is your backend. Okay, so in the backend, if I talk about Node.js, we use web sockets, that is socket.io. What it actually does is, if I'm chatting to someone, do I need to refresh the page again and again? No, I don't refresh the page, right? So in that case, the backend is actually giving you real time changes. Okay, that means once you type a message, you receive a message without refreshing the page. So for that, we have tools like socket.io in the backend. If I talk about Node.js, okay, so that's how you can actually create a real time chat application. And for that, we have tons of tutorial everywhere on YouTube also. Okay. Yes. So guys, now I think means we have to use Django. If you are into ML, and you want to try something, then you can go for Django. But if you are a beginner, I won't recommend that, because I would say that at least stick to JavaScript so that you don't need to learn that much. Okay, so that's why merge stack is recommended, because everything is JavaScript here. You can see that each stuff here, you can see that everything here is JavaScript, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then React.js, then Node.js, and then Express.js, then MongoDB also uses JavaScript code. Okay, so it's very easy. Sir, after first year, how to grab internships? I think you all are from very good colleges, so colleges also provide some internships. But apart from that, how I got internships were I simply applied on LinkedIn. Actually, when you start learning development, I'm talking about development, I don't have experience for other fields. But if you are talking about web development, anyone who is trying to recruit you or giving you some freelance work would first of all look for your projects. Okay, so I created good projects and I just listed them on my resume and also in my LinkedIn profile when I started initially. And from that I got a lot of projects very easily. Like you would just go to LinkedIn and you would just look for internships in React.js, internships in web development, you can search about that. So yeah, that's how you can actually get internships. But first of all, projects must be there in your LinkedIn profile, and then you have to search continuously. Like I would say, you would get thousands of rejections. First of all, be prepared for that. It's not like कि 10 जगह अप्लाई करोगे रिस्पॉन्स आ जाएगा, नहीं आता है. You have to first of all apply thousands of places, and then later on, if you have some experience, like now I've worked with 4 5 companies, so if I apply now today, so I have that experience, I can mention that in my profile, in my resume. So that would give me an edge. So with time you would get more priority over others. So yeah, you have to just give your efforts, and definitely you have to get a lot of rejections before applying, like you, before getting your first internship. Okay, right. So I think time's up, and now we have to wrap up this session. So if you have any doubts, you can actually contact me. I have shared my profile also. Like you can message me on LinkedIn. Okay, everyone must have a LinkedIn account. Okay, I have shared my LinkedIn. You can check out my LinkedIn.
Okay,
Yes.
so I hope everyone enjoyed the session. So I would like to thank each and every one of you for your participation and engagement in the discussions. Before we say our goodbyes, I have information for you about our SPP program. In Student Partnership Program, we foster collaboration among students for various colleges. From various colleges, participants gain exclusive benefits including internships from our sponsors, free Cognizance passes for the top 10 SPPs, and many more benefits. So now I have an exciting piece of news for you to share with you all. Our annual technical fest is just around the corner, and it is a fantastic opportunity to further explore your technical passions, participate in a wide range of events, and connect with like-minded individuals. So I encourage all of you to follow Cognizance official Instagram pages. Let me just show you the link again. Yeah, so this one, when you'll scan this one QR code, you'll be able to follow our official Instagram page. And this one is for the SPP program. So you can scan the QR code. So thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you, Harshil sir, for collaborating with Cognizance IIT Roorkee.
Okay, thanks everyone for having me today, and it was great having an interaction with all of you. So, all the best for your future, and if you want to become a web developer, so it's a very growing field, so definitely go for it.
Okay, sir. So I think it's the time to over the uh, meeting. And at last, I want to make an announcement that every student who's joined the meeting will be getting goodies and the certificates. So, sir, I guess now we can end the meeting.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.